There are so many viral videos out right now about why I avoid people at 43, why I avoid people at 65, at 29, at 32. And it made me wonder, should this be our attitude? In a world where people are lost and lonely and in need of love and support, should this be the way that we're thinking? So today, I'm going to talk about the problems I see with this attitude, also the times you maybe should avoid people, and the lessons we can learn from both of them. So here we go. If you're new to my channel, welcome. My name is Carrie Stone, and this is Carry On, where we talk all things money, movement, and mindset. And today, we're talking mindset, because when it comes to avoiding people, our mindset is greatly affected, either for the good or the bad. Now, while loneliness is a global issue, it's important to understand its prevalence in certain countries. In the United States, recent studies have shown that 22% of adults feel lonely or socially isolated. Are they avoiding people? Or are people avoiding them? Either way, studies are showing it's just not healthy. According to research, social isolation in adults over the age of 65 can increase dementia rates by 50%. That is 50%. Astounding. It has been shown to increase the risk for stroke and cardio problems by 30%. And older adults are 26% more likely to have mortality from other causes. Essentially, loneliness and self-isolation can contribute to poorer overall health and an increased likeliness of chronic diseases. We learned a lot from the COVID pandemic. And what we learned most was that people need people. The closed off world was not a happy world, and we are still recovering from that today. And we will be recovering from that for generations. And so if we learned such valuable information in 2020, what is this new obsession with avoiding people? Why is this such a viral thought? So the question remains, is avoiding people a good and healthy way to live? Well, I say yes and no. Yes, if you are avoiding certain people who are causing you mental or physical harm. I've had to avoid people because they literally made me sick. Separating myself from them was the only solution that I had left after I had tried everything else. Avoiding them was not my first choice, but it ended up being my best choice. Because doing so, I was able to get my identity back, and I made greater strides in my wellness journey. I also think that we live in a world that keeps us constantly busy. And that causes us to avoid really good things that can only be done in solitude. I spend a lot of time alone, and I do so because I'm learning and growing and praying and taking care of my body and doing things that are helping me to not just make my home a better place, but the world a better place. And these are all the good things that require quiet and solitude, but they are not attempts at avoiding people. And actually, they help me to be kinder and more loving to the people that I do spend time with. And that's one of the problems that I see with the avoiding people mentality. Avoidance makes us weak. I lost my ability to sing during my sick years. This was devastating to me. As I started to get better, I tried to sing, and it was horrible. My initial response was just to avoid it. I just will not consider myself a singer anymore. But to do that was to deny a part of me that made me who I was. So I continued to sing imperfectly. I have embarrassed myself as I have worked to build my voice back, and it has been really hard and oftentimes just utterly humiliating. But my voice is getting stronger because I chose not to avoid it. And the same is true with avoiding people. It may seem easier, less anxiety inducing, and all those things. But the truth is, the more you avoid people, the harder it is for you to be around people. You lose your peopling muscle, if you will. I know I lost my peopling muscle when I was sick. I had been so isolated from people that when I started to get back to spending time with people, I felt like I had been raised by monkeys or something. It was just horrifying. I could not figure out how to communicate like an adult human being. I felt awkward and uncomfortable, and I could not seem to speak in any sort of intelligent way. But I didn't accept it. I kept putting myself into social situations. And now I only embarrass myself like 50% of the time. Progress, right? When we're alone too much, it opens us up to bad behaviors, poor manners, and a great loss of our people skills. I know that cussing is not seen as a bad or a negative thing in today's culture, but I don't like it and I don't want that coming out of my mouth. But when I was younger, I had quite the potty mouth, and it usually only came out in times of anger or frustration. Now, as I grew in my faith, I learned to tame my tongue most of the time. And having kids really helped a lot with that. Well, when my kids grew up and left, I was alone a lot of the time. And I found myself reverting back to cussing when I hit my foot on the door jamb or dropped something or got frustrated with myself. I never would have done that if they were around. But here I was, cussing like a sailor on leave, and I was horrified by myself. Being around people makes me better. Let's face it, we dress differently, we speak differently, we act differently, just because we have other people around us. And I think this is a good thing. When I spend too much time alone, I get depressed and withdrawn, and a lot less concerned about my appearance and my manners. And through this, I've really learned it is not good for man or woman to be alone. When I was in the midst of my sick years, the doctors told me I had to stop homeschooling my kids, that I was not going to get any better as long as I was under that amount of pressure. So we put our kids in the local Christian school. And suddenly I was alone all of the time. I cried my eyes out the first week. I hated it so much. I couldn't drive. I couldn't walk without a cane. I couldn't go anywhere by myself. So basically, I had suddenly become a prisoner in my home from 7 a.m. until 4 p.m. It was awful. I had already lost so much of myself because of the sickness. I couldn't sing or travel or speak or train or coach. I couldn't write my thoughts out. I couldn't read and study. And now the last bit of me was taken away. I was no longer a homeschool mom, and I loved teaching my kids. I loved watching them learn and grow and become more awesome with each day. But now they were gone, and I was alone, and I felt incredibly helpless. So from firsthand experience, I can truly say, it is not good for this woman to be alone. I've witnessed this in my son's life too. He's been living the last couple of years in West Seattle in a teeny tiny little studio apartment with his cat. He goes to work and he works with people. He lives in the city, so obviously he's around people, but he was spending a lot of his time alone in his small little place. Well, 2 months ago, he moved from that tiny little place into a 3-story duplex where he now has 2 other roommates. And I saw him this past weekend, and he looked like a different person. Where his posture had been all hunched over and he looked very ill and weak, he suddenly had his shoulders just back. He was standing so tall, and he looked thinner and healthier and happier, and it was incredible. And so I assumed he had started working out like he said he was going to with his roommate. And I asked him that, and he said no, he hadn't. So the only thing that had changed is he was no longer alone. Avoiding people keeps us from growing as human beings because we're never faced with the opportunity to say the wrong thing or to be insulted by something someone else says. Would it be nice to not have to apologize or to not need to go to someone and admit that something they said hurt your feelings? Absolutely. Wouldn't that be great? But it's not reality, and it doesn't help us to be better. And if we're not growing as human beings, does that make the world a better place? I say no. We are fallible human beings living in a fallible, fallen world. We can flee from it and hide in our little cocoon, avoiding people, or we can embrace it and use it as an opportunity to grow, to become great, to become worthy of the amazing calling of being a human being. I remember the first time I attended this retreat event called Walk to Emmaus. It was at an old monastery in Northeast Maryland. At the time, my life was horrific. I had had a bad car accident, was injured badly in that. My sister was killed 2 months later in a car accident. People kept dying that year. It was just such a bad year. So here I am in this peace and solitude. It was nothing but love and quiet and kindness all weekend, and I did not want to leave. I sat on this bench overlooking this valley below, and I wanted to stay in that solitude. A friend sat down next to me and said, "Yes, it seems tempting, doesn't it? But if you stay here, you're neglecting the people that need you. You're neglecting the life you still have to live." So I went back. I had things to do. I had work to accomplish. I had love to give. To stay away from people would have only served to keep me away from learning all the lessons I would learn over the next 33 years. If I had stayed in that peace and solitude, I would have never gotten uncomfortable in my life where I would pack up my car and move to Nashville. I wouldn't have met my husband, had my 2 amazing kids, developed the depth of character that only comes from some really hard life lessons, or made the friends that got me through all those hard times. My life would have been quiet, but it also would have been empty and void of all meaning. Avoiding people is not the answer. So what's my solution? First of all, if you're sick of people, so sick of people that you want to avoid them, maybe stop and ask yourself why. Are you becoming unloving, unkind, rude, impatient? What has changed for you or in you that has caused you to want to avoid people? Be honest with yourself. You may just be surprised at some of your answers. Now, I understand avoiding overstimulation if you have problems with anxiety is really important. But you can do that and not avoid people. So if somebody calls and asks you to attend a concert with them, but you know that's too overstimulating, you can turn down the concert invite and ask them instead if they would like to go hiking with you, or come over for a quiet meal. There are ways you can still have people in your life without being overstimulated. And yes, avoid narcissists and anyone who can cause you harm. Absolutely. And you may need to take a rest from some people from time to time, but always try to rebuild relationships if you have the ability to do so, and if and only if those relationships are safe. No one is perfect. People will make mistakes. You will make mistakes. So err on the side of kindness and forgiveness and love. And avoid people if you need to work and focus for the sake of accomplishing a goal. But don't use that as a long-term approach to life. It's not healthy. And if you want to know more about how to make the most of your time while you're not avoiding people, you may want to watch this video right here. And until next time, carry on.